Much. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship for a second time today. I beg to move this House has considered e-petition 321862 relating to immigration. I want to start by paying credit to the over 125,000 people, including 202 people from my own constituency in Ipswich, who have signed this petition to stop illegal immigration and have secured this important debate in Parliament today. And I'm glad to be able to introduce this petition to Parliament as a member of a petitions committee. It's well over 4 years ago now that more people voted to take back control of our money, our laws, and crucially, our borders than had voted for anything in the history of this country. And this petition is another powerful democratic reminder of our responsibility to deliver borders which the people of this country can have confidence in. Before I get into the substance of this petition, I want to head off arguments often made on the left which seek to stifle meaningful debates on illegal immigration like this one. Contrary to what they may say, wanting to have a fair system of rules to govern who enters our country is not about being anti-immigrant or anti-refugee. And the vast majority of my constituents who write to me about this very issue are not anti-immigrant and they are not racist. Like me, they are immensely proud to be part of a diverse town in Ipswich, which has benefited enormously from immigration and which has shown its spirit of generosity to some of the most needy refugees coming directly from war-torn countries. Last month, I visited the Suffolk Refugee Centre in Ipswich to hear some of their stories, including those who have become successful entrepreneurs in our town. Our asylum system should be based on compassion, but for this to work, it must also be based on rules that people can have trust in. This is a thrust of this petition, and a poll by YouGov in August, which found that 73% consider illegal channel crossings to be a serious issue. And I know from talking to people in my constituency and elsewhere that the overwhelming mood among the public is one of frustration at the lawlessness we so often see in our seas. Added to this is a vexation that a great country such as ours, which has voted to take back its sovereignty, seems to have its hands tied when it comes to controlling who comes into our island home and removing people who are here illegally. The vast majority of people in this country know that without borders, we don't have a country, and that while we should welcome the world's best and brightest and those generally seeking refuge who want to come here legally, our hospitality must not be taken for granted. Perhaps the most important word in this petition, though, is the word action. The public's patience is hanging by a thread, and we have reached the point where words will no longer suffice. Today, I want to underline how action is urgently needed in two key areas if we are to mend the public's broken trust in the integrity of our borders. The first is stemming the flow of people entering this country illegally, and the second is ending the abuse of our broken asylum system. I'll start with the issue of illegal entry and the unprecedented number of illegal migrants who we've seen crossing the Channel this year. So far in 2010, more than 7,000 people have entered our country this way, which is more than 5 times the number who arrived via this route in 2019. Seeing these boats flouting our laws with near impunity on almost a daily basis over recent months has been particularly difficult to take for the law-abiding majority in the UK at a time where we're being asked to follow some of the greatest restrictions on our freedoms that this country has ever had to impose. The images we have seen on our TV screens of these illegal boats arriving at our shores is a stark reminder that over 4 years on from the 2016 Brexit vote, we still haven't taken back control of our borders in a meaningful sense. The only way to prevent these illegal crossings is by sending a very clear message to everyone thinking of coming here illegally that all attempts will be futile. We must look at what the Australians did with their Operation Sovereign Borders, where they blocked all boats from landing in Australia. After the policy was introduced, the number of people trying to enter Australia illegally by boat dropped from over 2,600 a month to just over 200. We must be prepared to deploy similar safe return tactics, and I welcome the fact that the government is looking at a range of options, including learning from the Australian approach. I know the Shadow Home Secretary has said that this approach lacks compassion, But I would like to know from the honourable member from St Helens North today exactly how the status quo is compassionate when it fuels the evil trafficking in human beings and dangerous sea crossings that we are currently seeing, and what exactly is Labour's position on this matter, and what would they propose to do about it. It is also good that this government is working with the French to prevent these crossings, but we must also be clear that our ability to protect our borders should not be contingent on the French or any other third country being willing to play ball. We must have the capacity to act in our own national interest, and after the EU transition period has ended, we must extricate ourselves from all EU and international rules which prevent us from towing these boats all the way back to France if necessary. Sending out the message that illegally crossing the Channel just won't work is also a humanitarian necessity. When the leadership of the Labour Party and others in the Liberal left establishment are content to turn a blind eye to the crossings, it plays into the hands of the ruthless people smugglers who exploit these vulnerable migrants, often taking their money only to push them out to sea in unseaworthy boats and without life jackets, but with instructions to threaten to throw themselves overboard to prevent them from being picked up by the French authorities. The tragic case of a 16-year-old Sudanese boy who washed up on the French beach in August after drowning trying to reach the UK should never have been allowed to happen. And I understand another death may have happened this weekend in the Channel. Those who refuse to act to stop these crossings, or even encourage them out of an ideological attachment to open borders, are putting the people they claim to want to help in immense danger. By way of a contrast, in the 5 years before Australia implemented its zero-tolerance approach to illegal boats in 2013, 877 migrants drowned trying to make the journey, but since I understand that none have. Moving on now to our asylum system. Coupled with stopping illegal entry, we must also diminish the pull factors which are causing migrants to attempt these dangerous crossings in the first place. At the heart of this must be overhauling our broken asylum system, as these migrants know that if they're able to reach our shores and claim asylum, the overwhelming chances are they'll be able to stay for good. Less than 3% of approximately 9,000 people who have crossed the Channel illegally since the start of 2019 have been returned. And this is despite around 80% of them this year being found to have no credible asylum claim here in the UK. As my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, has rightly pointed out as well, the exploitation of our asylum system is abetted by certain liberal sections of our legal establishment who will exploit our human rights law and submit multiple bogus claims on behalf of migrants who have already had their claim rejected to stop deportations. The spectacle we saw earlier this month, where 29 out of 30 failed asylum seekers were taken off a deportation flight at the last moment following intervention of human rights lawyers, is a clear demonstration of how a law as it stands just isn't on the side of the people it's meant to serve. I know my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, has her finger on the pulse on these issues, especially compared to the Labour Party, who voted at their party conference last year to make this problem much more difficult by closing all immigration detention centres. By contrast, the action the government has set out in its response to this petition, like withdrawing from the Dublin regulation and the EU's common asylum system at the end of the transition period, will help us end the situation where the UK takes 3 times as many asylum seekers from the whole of the EU than we send back. However, I would urge the honourable member for Croydon South to go further today than the Home Office's written response to this petition, when it says that a migrant who has entered the UK illegally can have no expectation of remaining here in the absence of a genuine claim for UK protection. The expectation should be that anyone who has deliberately chosen to enter this country through an illegal route and often travelled through many safe European countries to get here should have no expectation that they'll be able to stay. It is unjustifiable to the public that if they break the law, they will be punished. But if someone breaks our immigration laws, they stand the chance of being rewarded with staying here. This is also an essential part of building an ever more compassionate asylum system, and ideally one where all asylum claims are processed in centres outside of the UK, close to where the most needy are located. It's completely unfair to them and the taxpayers funding our asylum system when economic migrants from a safe country like France can jump the queue ahead of people wanting to come here legally and directly from a war-torn country. There is an important debate to be had about whether we can accept more asylum seekers legally as a country, but this is an entirely separate debate, and actually one that will be very difficult to have until members of the public have confidence that the laws of our country are being consistently followed. What the public won't accept is a notion pushed by some on the left that because, in their eyes, we don't take enough refugees legally, we are somehow deserving of the illegal attempts to breach our borders. So in conclusion, Mr. Chairman, I know the Home Secretary appreciates the urgency of this issue, and I recognise the need for a robust dual approach to tackling illegal entry and our broken asylum system if we're going to get a grip on illegal immigration. This is the only approach that delivers on the millions of people who voted in 2016 in the EU referendum, and is both fair to the law-abiding people in this country and compassionate towards those who need our help the most. I'd ask the honourable member for Croydon South, though, to be more completely clear with the public that we won't leave the job almost done. Everyone who breaks our laws to come here must be removed, and we must take it into our own hands when it comes to acting with autonomy in the English Channel to protect our sovereignty. This is a test of our political will in this country, and I trust the Minister will ensure we seize all opportunities to take back control and ensure our country is no longer a passive actor. Mr. Chairman, over the last few months, I have received significant amounts of correspondence on this issue, and I'm sure that all right honourable and honourable members will be in the same position. And I'd say that there is a desire that we should be pro-immigration. We should be pro-people coming to this country who want to come here, contribute, integrate. And when it comes to the most needy and the most vulnerable, we should have a rules-based process driven by compassion. But what I believe those people who have written to me do not want is a situation which looks to them like lawlessness and a situation where people can jump the queue. We need to have a rules-based system. Yes, if compassionate is hard, but we need to deal with the issue of illegal immigration as a matter of absolute priority. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Well, I'd like to thank all of the honourable and right honourable members who have contributed towards this debate today, particularly the Minister for the statement that he's just made. I have discussed this matter before with the Minister. I've had the benefit of having discussed it with you before, and I am confident that this is not a simple thing to deal with. It is complex, and it's not straightforward. And I also appreciate that as much as many of the people who signed this petition would like us to just snap our fingers and sort the problem out, I understand that in many respects the hands of government have been tied, and clearly, post the 31st of December, the government would be in a much better position to be able to take the kind of action that we need to take to deal with this issue. I think something I tried to say in my speech, which I didn't think I made quite clear, was I think there should be an expectation that if you arrive in this country illegally, you'll be sent back. I mean, ultimately, there is a legal process to go through, and if you have knowingly rejected that process and not followed it, then frankly we have to ask ourselves this question: are you that different from anybody else who knowingly breaks the law? And in my view, the answer to that question would be no. I also think that many of honourable friends have also made a point that there is a fact here. However good an individual may think their grounds are for claiming asylum in this country and for moving to Britain, the end of the day is they come from a safe European country. So frankly, you know, my understanding of what an asylum seeker is someone who's fleeing from a unsafe country. They are leaving a safe country. That, by definition, means that they, in my view, I struggle to see how they're a refugee in those instances. So I'm broadly coming to the government's position. Generally, in terms of the honourable member for St Helens North, who I know is pretty moderate and pretty balanced, and he spoke, I think, after my maiden speech as well. He seems like a nice guy. But I would say, in terms of the under new management point, we'll see. Because ultimately, I think that the government, to deal with this issue effectively, will have to take some pretty robust action. And there will be some things that come through this House, an asylum bill, etc. And it will be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see how Her Majesty's opposition react to that kind of legislation. And, of course, in terms of new management, it's an interesting tactic when the manager doesn't even send his players out on the pitch, which, frankly, sometimes feels like the case with the Leader of Her Majesty's opposition. At some point, those players will have to be sent out on the pitch and will have to probably vote one way or another. I don't think abstaining is a long-term strategy, and I think it's a long parliament, and time will tell. Anyway, I don't want to be too, political, but very clearly I have been. Thank you to all petitioners who signed this petition. It was a very important issue that matters to millions of people up and down the country, and thank you for all the members who contributed, for your wonderful chairmanship, which is, you know, I've had the privilege of, you know, twice today. I've been very spoiled, and Minister in particular for a robust statement, which I think was reassuring, and I think it'll be reassuring to many of the people who signed this petition. Thank you very much.